outcome as of now, or an important building block of liberal thinking. We are more or less liberals. And of course, many of us define ourselves as conservatives, but we're in the liberal, basically in the liberal ethos. And human right is clearly linked to individualism and to the political process, which has to be neutral. And more interested in the procedure rather than the substantive way of doing politics. Interested in legal constraint, and they're only dealing, basically with the public domain. And this position is so strong. The strong commitments of people in religion, in ethics, are considered somewhat irrelevant in the political discourse. But the communitarian response or critique of this position is that we need to cultivate a sense of citizenship in the community. We need to involve in the cultivation of civic virtue. We have to be involved in the process of reasoning for good life. What is the good life is politically extremely important. And the role of the government is critical. A strong government may not necessarily be a negative factor. Market has to be somehow not controlled, but somehow managed, especially managed for the common good. We don't allow the market simply to develop on its own without any kind of influence from the outside. There's more emphasis on the stakeholders than the shareholders. And the stakeholders meaning every human being in a particular company, every member has a stake in the well-being of that company. So the company's profit making is only part of the story. It has to be responsible for the well-being of all the people involved. And this is not necessarily diametrically opposed. This is very much of a concern of the liberals about the development of the society, of the collective good of the society. There's a great deal of emphasis on the work ethic, on even the motivation for the maximization of profit, the idea of the self-interest, which is an expression of our rationality. Sometimes even greed is considered an important ingredient for motivating the dynamics of the market. And you know the earlier discussion that self-interests normally considered morally not acceptable in terms of private morality may turn out to have great contribution to the wealth of a nation. And since the market is so complex, any management of the market may turn out to be counterproductive. So this idea against relativism of communitarianism, against this idea is focusing on almost like the sacred commitment to individualism, to the dignity of the individual, and commitment to the importance of law governing a relatively free market, and this commitment to the public process, which should not be involved with the matters of power as private choices. What is the Confucian response to this kind of situation? And on the surface, go ahead.
Can I first ask a question about the notion of thick ethics.
Yes.
Is there any tension between thick ethics, which focuses on the individuals, on the specific things, and like UN Declaration of United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which tries to give a universal principle on all ethical issues? Is there any tension between the two?
Sure. I think universal ethics, or the whole idea of human rights, are considered absolutely critical for the liberals. And in many other traditions, people raise questions about the application of universal principles and human rights to specific cultural traditions. For example, one question, I don't know your view on this. What is of course the difference is clear. Which one you consider more important, sovereignty rights or human rights? Sovereignty rights meaning a country's ability to govern its own affairs without interference from the outside. Human rights meaning that the government if the government doesn't perform in a civilized way, the government can be criticized by people from abroad. I think most of the liberals, I belong to this camp, would consider human rights more basic than sovereignty rights. Part of the reason is that some governments use sovereignty rights as a way